Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us. We have a fantastic panel for you today. My name is Christopher Carbone, and I'm from Board Game Academics. We are an editorial board of academic researchers and professionals that are seeking to utilize tabletop gaming in innovative ways to help our communities. I'm really proud and ecstatic to share with you our panel today, and I'm so glad that our presentation today will hopefully help not just us here today, but will spread the word of how tabletop gaming can be utilized to help mental health and mental health professionals in a number of wonderful ways. I'm joined by tremendous guests here today. I'll introduce them and I'll have them talk about their particular work in tabletop gaming, their clinical work, their organizational work, and what their organizations do to better serve their populations that are in need. So with that said, as I mentioned before, I've worked in career development for many years, career counseling in particular, about 20 years, helping people find their purpose, their vocation in the higher education setting. I've worked in a number of different educational settings throughout. My own background is in developmental psychology, my doctoral work there. I'm currently a clinical doctoral student. I'm hoping to be like my professional board here today and utilize tabletop gaming in more innovative ways to help my clients. So with that said, I'd like to turn it over to my guest here. Joe, would you be so kind of starting us off?
Sure. My name is Dr. Joe Atanasio. I'm a licensed clinical psychologist in the states of California, New Jersey, and New York. And I run a private practice in Manhattan as well as in Forest Hills, Queens, New York, where I see everyone, a wide, variety and diverse clientele, all the way from adolescents, around 10, all the way up to older adults. I think my oldest client right now is in her 80s. And I am also I'm a board member for the organization Geek Therapeutics. This organization is sort of a conglomerate of clinicians or mental health advocates, and what our focus is on integrating or teaching how to integrate geek subculture into therapeutic practice or mental health advocacy. We give CEU trainings to other clinicians who need hours. We also provide direct services to clients in all the states that our clinicians are licensed in, including California, New Jersey, New York, Texas. And we have a whole lot of stuff in the pipeline that hopefully will expand the use of tabletop games in therapeutic practice. In my private practice, I actually run both a teen as well as an adult group that utilizes the 5E rules of Dungeons and Dragons in a group therapy setting. Oftentimes, clients will come in specifically for the management of social anxiety, depression, or some aspects of neurodivergency like ADHD or being on the autism spectrum. And so a lot of their therapeutic goals can also be tackled while enjoying the narrative of a D&D game that I run. Would you like me to keep going and talking about my clinical work, or you want to first finish everyone else?
Do a little more clinical work.
More? Okay. All right. I'll give a little bit of background on sort of how I started. I'm actually relatively new to tabletop games. I think I started maybe about 7 years ago. I had a lot of friends who played in high school, but I was more at the time a console gamer and a competitive Smash player, Smash Melee player, and Halo player. I do remember my friends one time inviting me to play, I guess it was D&D, I don't know if it was like 3rd edition, it must have been 3rd edition, and I remember I played a bard with a didgeridoo, and that was my character. That's all I remember though. More recently, I picked it back up. I was looking for something for my friends and I to do, and I picked up the Player's Handbook, and I read through it, and I had a session with my friends where I did a real half-assed job being the GM, and it ended up going pretty well, But what really clicked immediately was I realized how cathartic and therapeutic and the mood shift and change and the dynamics of everyone, sort of was working all together in this wonderful way as we played this game. And I could see the therapeutic value of tabletop games. So at the time I was working in a nursing home facilities with another company where they would send me out to different nursing homes or physical rehabilitation centers to work with older adults. And what was really lacking was any type of group activities for these nursing homes. And one of the things about that you see as a clinician in that type of setting, that clinical setting, is that a lot of older adults who are in a nursing home, they're non-ambulatory, they can't walk, some are even bed-bound, or they have to be taken and placed into the wheelchair, and a lot of their autonomy has been taken away, and so oftentimes depression is really the number one mental health issue in nursing home facilities, because what ends up happening is older adults will tend to isolate themselves. And so my goal was sort of to get them out of their room. And I had to find a way to do it that was no longer bingo, right? Or, it's just everyone reaches a cap of how much bingo you can play. So I pitched this idea to the director of the nursing home facility of utilizing this game and just seeing how it would go. And to my surprise, some of those adults that I chose for this test run of this therapy group that uses D&D were actually OG players themselves of first edition. So they knew more than I did, and that was awesome. And to see them really begin to engage, have a reason to leave their room, look forward to doing something every week. There was a lot of noticeable differences in their clinical symptoms. And what was also really helpful, I realized, was that some of those OG players of first edition, took leadership roles in being able to teach, their fellow peers, different aspects of the game or what they knew, even though, we were playing 5th edition. And that then started to open my mind into how it's not just cathartic, but it's actually skill building. And tabletop games facilitate actually the building of skills that can be very important in strengthening, neurocognitive development, abilities that issues like depression, anxiety, or something in regards to neurodiversity, ADHD, might prevent from, growing to capacity. So I then took that model and brought it into my private practice with both teens and adults, and from there it's really taken off. I'm now in my 7th year of running these groups. They run from 10 to 12 sessions, and sometimes at the end of those 12 sessions, people sign back up for another round of it. And what I really try to focus on is integrating my individual clients' therapy goals into the narrative structure of whatever game we're playing. And so, for instance, as an example, if I have a teen who, is struggling with making friends and has a lot of social anxiety, doesn't know how to find ways maybe to read some social cues or find their ways to integrate into a group conversation, I will have their character be challenged in ways in game, in the narrative, to find out how to do that, whether it's by rallying a village together to go fight some gnolls, whether it's convincing some anti-heroes to decide to leave their path of vengeance, whatever the situation might arise. And so what we're doing is, through the narrative that we're playing, we're also working on clinical goals as well. But then I also have found that, the group dynamics allow for also, again, a lot of those skill-building exercises. I remember one of the most amazing things that I saw was I had one teen who was on the spectrum, and in terms of rolling the dice, right, there would be some stimulus triggers and rituals that he would engage in, where he would have to, sort of have almost like this little mantra and continuously roll the dice, which was also a stim behavior, and it might take like a minute to actually roll one dice. And so the rest of the group was just was very patient with him, but at the same time we needed the group to move forward. And so the group actually compassionately worked with him on sort of helping him create this new rule structure where he would be able to grab the dice and do what he needed to do for about 10 seconds. And after the 10 seconds, he had a choice. He could roll the dice and take the roll, or he could choose to hold on to the dice a little bit longer, and then the roll would be automatically a 10. And based upon whatever his skill check was, minus or plus, right, that's what it would occur. And so what this did was, it gave my client, who was on the spectrum, a little bit more of some freedom to be able to integrate, his STEM behaviors into the game that we were playing. But what it also did was facilitate this compassionate cooperation with individuals who maybe had some of their own anxiety issues but weren't on the spectrum, and really build this teamwork structure. So that was one of the most amazing things I saw. I've just continued to also go to conferences and teach other clinicians. We have a training actually at Geek Therapeutics that trains clinicians specifically how to be a GM and how to integrate the practice into their therapeutic work. So,
excellent. Well, thank you, Joe.
Yeah.
All right, we'll move up to Joseph.
2 Joes in a row?
Nice.
Yeah. How are you? My name is Joseph Talask. I am the Executive Director of Guardians MH, and it stands for Mental Health. We're a 501c3 nonprofit focused on spreading mental health awareness throughout the gaming space, as well as being a first step with assisting individuals with gathering meaningful resources in a safe and inclusive atmosphere. We strive to really boost accessibility to meaningful resources through various different programs and initiatives, from our mental health kit program that we ship across the country to any individual in need of resources, to our vetted mental health and crisis resources library utilized on multiple online platforms like Discord and Twitch, and various other programs working with studios, communities, and groups to let them know that their player base and community members are not alone, that somebody is there for them and with them, and will help guide them to next step support and resources. We try and implement them as utilizing gaming, online gaming, as a vehicle to provide access to these resources directly from inside the game. We've worked with studios as recently Bungie with implementing access to those resources directly from the game itself. So as a player, you can, at any time when you might not be feeling well, or you might be curious or this and that and looking for resources, they're available right there in the game. I'm also a volunteer crisis counselor with Crisis Text Line. I've been doing that for going on 3 years now. I'm what they consider a night owl. I usually take between 10 p.m. at night and midnight till 2 a.m. Helping any individuals with whatever situations they might be going through, and just being a shoulder for them to lean on and work things through. And then also I do this in the other half of the time. Unfortunately, I'm not as accomplished as all these gentlemen here, but yeah, and that's what we do. We try and work with other groups and organizations to try and provide access to mental health resources and create new programs and vehicles in order to help the ever-growing gaming community.
Excellent. Thank you,
That's
Joe.
what I do.
Will?
Wow, that text is really small and really big at the same time. Hi, my name is Will. My full professional title is Dr. William Nation. Don't call me that. My first name is Will. Please call me that. Dr. Nation is my father, all that kind of stuff. I forgot that I wrote that in there. Anyway, so I'm a staff psychologist. My primary role is I work at the Johns Hopkins University Counseling Center, which means that I work a lot with the college population, your traditional college age as well as non-traditional students. I also have a private practice that I work with clients from all over the lifespan and spectrum of mental health concerns. I also do a lot of other things. I review games, I create nerdy content, I consult about weird psychological things, I speak at conferences and conventions and so on and so forth. A lot of that just started out of things that I wanted to do, things I wanted to see. I started speaking at conferences because, pro tip, if you do a panel at a lot of conferences, they give you a free pass, which as a grad student was great. It's like as long as I could drive myself to the thing, I could get in for free. So that was fun. But yeah, my passion here is talking about, communicating about mental health, trying to kind of lower the barriers between people and the help and treatment that they need. Because that's been a really big piece in my life. There are a lot of people in my life that kind of helped push me the direction to get things that I needed. And so that's a big deal for me. Also, as part of my work at the Counseling Center, I also do a lot of things on focusing on things like social justice and diversity, equity, and inclusion. And so sometimes I end up kind of combining those interests and talking about those things and how they exist or don't in gaming spaces. I also do a bunch of other weird things. I, publish articles, really anything that allows me to get word out to reach people and talk about these topics. And how I got started with mental health and nerd culture stuff is I was a dork and then I went into mental health. That was pretty much it.
There it is.
It was not very complicated at all. But for me, it was a process of, I'd been playing tabletop games for, ever. I'd become a forever DM at one point because, if you know how to do it, you are that forever. So that was a fun thing. But then I was in my training and I was doing things in practicum spaces and really looking for ways to, number one, inflate my hours because I needed to see more people so that I could prove that I could do my job correctly. But also that I was looking for ways to reach new and different people that weren't really coming into our center. And so I ended up pitching a Dungeons & Dragons based therapy group along with a bunch of other things. And my supervisor just kind of looked at me and was like, why are you talking about anything else? Like, you want to play tabletop games, so just do that. Which I didn't think it would be that easy, but It was actually that easy. So I guess just do that. I don't know. But, I had a lot of really good mentorship and sort of leg ups from this. And the fun thing that I learned is that by starting to do this kind of stuff, you find the other people that are out here doing it. And I've, almost exclusively experienced everybody in the community that's doing this kind of things is like we're just trying to do the same kinds of things or different kinds of things, but kind of pushing it ball forward, right? I do a lot of things in a college counseling center that are really specific to my role, but also that means I have a lot of privilege and power in a situation where, like, I work for Johns Hopkins University. They have a lot of money. Their name opens doors for people, and so there's a lot of times where I'm just like, hey, let's do this thing. And someone at the center is like, yeah, okay, I guess that sounds good, which I don't know why they continue to listen to me. Like, that's a really interesting decision for their part, but, whatever. Yeah, I do therapy groups for college students. So similar to kind of what you were saying here, we focus a lot on some of the same things, social anxiety, autism spectrum, communication skills, those kinds of things. And the way I kind of phrase it to people is like, this is a way to kind of get people into a therapeutic space that already are going to have a bad time in a therapeutic space. So trying to pitch somebody like, hey, you're anxious about social stuff, why don't you sit in a group with a bunch of people that you don't know and talk about your feelings? That sucks.
Yeah.
That is hard. But if you can say like, hey, you'll just be pretending to play in this game and maybe you'll have a good time, and then you kind of slip it in. It's like trying to give a dog a pill. Is the idea, and there's some cheese. I don't know. That's sort of the idea, and try to make it as more accessible as possible. And since I work on a college campus, I go and talk to college students a lot. Go to clubs, go to games, talk to athletes. Just how to cater this to everybody's experience. Because the fun part is, if you've ever been any stripe of dork, you know that like nerdy, geeky people, they're all walks of life, right? It cuts across a lot of other identities. So you talk to a lot of like gamers that are like high tier athletes, and you talk to like gamers that are like really into like STEM topics and things, and so finding ways to kind of pitch all those things together. For me, a lot of this is big picture. So playing games is fun, right? It can tell you a lot of things about it, but it allows you to experiment with ways of being. And for a lot of people, you don't get options like that. I work with a lot of international students, for example, whose parents have told them what to do and what they are going to be since they were this high, which is not necessarily a bad thing, but if you're in college and this is your first opportunity to branch out and that's terrifying, why don't you pretend to be an elf about it for a minute and see what happens, right?
Or bard with a didgeridoo.
It was funny you mentioned that, because there is a bard in my current campaign who is, his life's goal is to build a death didgeridoo.
Excellent.
Unclear of who it will kill when he plays it. Currently it is now called the didgeridon't. Because,
there you go.
yeah, I wish I was smart enough to have come up with that. I swear it was them. But that's how gaming works, right? I also am constantly in process of trying to develop spaces and causes to ways to use gaming and nerd culture in therapeutics. Anime, video games, all those kind of things. If there is somebody out there who's willing to tell me that an idea is at least marginally good, I will keep doing it, because like I get paid a salary, man. Like I'll be here anyway, so they can't stop me after a point. But yeah, in terms of therapeutic work, I run D&D based groups for college students at Hopkins. I also do private practice kind of things. And then I also work a lot with trying to find ways to integrate different pieces in how they might be useful, right? So how does this game work for this group of people? How can we package counseling center services that people are already accessible for, that they already paid for? How can we get them in the door in a way that's going to be useful for them? Because one of the things is, at a college counseling center, there's a lot of ideas of what works and what doesn't work, and there's a lot of sort of rigidity in some folks, and also like transparently, it's kind of a weird pitch to say like, hey, are you having like feelings about stuff? Why don't you go talk to this random stranger about it? And so part of our counseling center I've been fortunate to find is that they're really don't really care how you package it. They just want to do the thing that they're supposed to be doing. And so I have a lot of experience of navigating weird higher ed spaces where you just like have cold meetings with people and they don't know who you are or what you're talking about. But they are willing to listen. Yeah.
Excellent. Thank you, Will.
Yep.
So just a little questions and answers for us and also everybody out there. I think one of the most interesting things that we've talked about so far is, obviously, Will, you mentioned in particular, we came to this naturally because we're geeks, dorks, nerds, we're the outcasts, we are the other in some respect, and we have found a community, we have found a home, we found a medium in which we can express ourselves and connect to other people that's unique.
Yeah.
That for us as clinicians, as service workers, as providers, I think that's nourishing. I think that's one of the things that we probably should take note of, that I think is necessary, because the clinical environment for people who are not clinicians can be a very challenging one, can be a very draining one. And going back to some of the elements, and Joe, you and I talked about this a few minutes earlier, going back to play, right? This concept that we are again engaging with the world in unique ways, that we can have those conversations yet again about the boundaries that we've established or that the world established for us, and see if there's some viability to really connect in a meaningful way above and beyond that. But what I think, Joe, you had said, I think Will had mentioned also, actually all of you did, in fact, was, can you talk a little bit more about, like, especially for the RPG stuff, but also games of all different aspects? Certainly not bingo, but there is something about engaging in games, especially in a therapeutic context, where I think you mentioned, Joe, there's a shift. There's something that at some point in playing a game, whether it's a video game, a tabletop, or an RPG, where the other can engage differently with the group, but also with themselves. And I think that's a really unique kind of magic circle in a way.
Yeah, I mean, I will say, to expand upon that, I mean, I think there is something very specific about games that allow you to throw yourself into a different kind of role. And I think that's one of the largest keys here because, bingo, you're not doing that, right? And, Monopoly is fun, but, that can be cutthroat sometimes. But there's something different about creating a character or taking on a persona or even, sort of, customizing an avatar in a video game, for instance, right? Yeah. And there's something about that process. And so psychologically, right, what I would say is you're taking parts of yourself that you may be curious about, but aren't aware of or haven't gotten the chance to explore or are too afraid to explore, or are being told not to explore. And the play avenue is really a safe way to bring some curiosity to the world and test certain things out, figure out what actually works, what is meaningful to you in an existential kind of way. Sure. And you're taking those parts that are inside of you and creating that character to go forth throughout a narrative, throughout a world, whether it's already pre-constructed or constructed on the way, right? And you find out a lot of different things on the way. A lot of the times actually, even when I have clients who, have particularly absolutely no interest in, let's say, joining like my D&D group or anything like that, or don't even really talk a lot about like geek subculture stuff in their therapy. I will still sometimes ask clients to do a silly intervention with me and create a D&D character. And the reason for that is because that process of creating a character, they end up choosing particular things to develop this character that are reflections of real deep needs that they have. And then they become really surprised when they say it out loud and see it tangibly in front of them. And so, I think there is a lot of value in play, not just for children, not just for adolescents, but for adults as well. It utilizes our also imagination, of course, which is one of the most important resources that we have. And oftentimes we're continuously told not to use that, I think, in a lot of, current societal structure. I would say especially in heavily urban areas where a lot of resource management is sort of prioritized because you need to survive. And we kind of forget, oh man, it's so important to play too, even if I'm in a city where my rent is like, $5,000 for a studio.
Yeah. Well, I know that you mentioned this also in passing about the surprise of a lot of the student groups that you got for your D&D groups were not the traditional geeks you think you would have, and what those kind of engagements have meant to them.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I will say, with a disclaimer that like Hopkins is a very academically focused institution, somewhat obviously. That doesn't mean they don't want to have a good time.
Sure.
And it also doesn't mean that they aren't also the other things. Like
Yes.
the student athletes, despite the fact that they're all incredibly intelligent and like pre-med for some reason, because everybody's pre-med at Hopkins, they're also a dude that likes to play basketball.
Yes.
They're also a young lady that likes to swim. They're also just a person that enjoys fencing, But it's gets at what everybody has in common and doesn't. Like, there are different things that, like, we don't watch all the same shows. We don't like all the same media. We don't even like all the same games. I mean, I bet if we asked everybody here, like, diversity of opinions about everything. But it allows you to kind of focus on some of the connective pieces that everybody has. Like, everybody has the capacity to enjoy a play experience. Everybody has the capacity to enjoy a game. We might all enjoy different games, but one of the other things I kind of pitch to college students is that it's like a sandbox.
Sure.
You can do whatever. Now, there are some games that are literally a sandbox, the end. But like every game has some aspect where you're experimenting, and it's going to make you feel things, maybe, even if it's maybe not things you intended to be feeling during your play. But it also gives you a chance to manage the distance between yourself and the person that's interacting with the game. And so in a tabletop RPG, for example, you are not your character. So you can do different things and experiment with different ways of being, like you said. And also, you can do things that normally have consequences just to see what would happen. Like, you can punch every single person you meet in the face. Now, is that going to be a healthy strategy? No. But, eventually something bad will happen. And that consequence might be important or interesting. But, also video games, same way. Like, who here hasn't played Skyrim and, some guy, some line fires and they treat you like a jerk and you're like, hold on, quick save, murder the entire town, and then, reload back and be like, see, I never did that. I'm not saying you should do that exactly. I'm not saying you should harm anyone, but also games are a way, and these are alternative ways to experiment with things that, especially, I work with a lot of college students whose lives are incredibly regimented, and everything is planned and pre-planned and in triplicate.
Sure.
And if you show up for 2 hours and you talk about you're gonna adopt a bear who's a wizard, let's have a good time with that, man.
Yeah.
I don't know. He has a wizard hat now, I guess.
My favorite thing outside of the therapeutic aspect of it that we're talking about is just the social connectiveness of gaming. Not just video games, online games. It's all gaming.
Yeah.
It brings such a wonderful social aspect to it that you can gather around. And even now, playing with COVID, it impacted, meeting in person. We couldn't do this during COVID. But utilizing things like online chat platforms and Roll20, you could continue your campaign. You could still connect with people who see themselves as kind of like introverts, but they're in their safe space.
Sure.
They don't go out, for sessions and stuff like that. They get in their office, their couch, and they feel safe.
Yeah.
But they open up online. They open up through gaming, and I love the social, how it connects everybody. And I thought you were heading that way, Will, the way you were talking about it.
I almost did. I might begin.
That's one of my favorite things, and that's what we started, how we got our start at the nonprofit, was utilizing just that connectiveness with online multiplayers and stuff like that, connecting with people where they are, and being there, providing them resources and tools where they are and where they feel safe. It's just amazing how far gaming has come overall, and utilizing it as tools.
Yes.
The way you all do is absolutely incredible. We've worked with Geek Therapeutics before on several things. We're starting to work with Will over here. He's such a nice guy. It's absolutely incredible, and I love how just the way you can utilize a board game in these aspects and have a real mental health impact for the positive. And you can work through different situations through your characters. And like Joe was talking about, it's an amazing tool to utilize. That's all I was going to say. Sorry.
Oh.
Yeah, well, and the connectivity piece is so core, because that's how I got into a lot of gaming spaces. Was I problematically played an online RPG for the entirety of my high school career, because I was a really isolated kid that didn't have a lot of friends, that didn't have a lot of people in my life that were willing to have conversations with me that I really needed. And being in an online space, while it was problematic in a lot of ways, and my real life suffered in a lot of ways, so don't do that if you're thinking of becoming an online RPG addict, I guess. But it was also really powerful, because I could talk to these people that I developed relationships with that felt safe, like you said, it was in my safe space.
Sure.
But also it allowed me to have exposure to people that I would never have met organically, and to have the conversations that I was not having organically. And there were some good and bad parts about that, and some things I would take or leave today. But also, connectivity is the human experience.
Sure.
We are a species that put all of our points in connectivity. And like, we're sometimes not good at it, but like, that's sort of the whole point. Like, if you don't have connections with people, you'll die.
Yes.
Like,
How
that's
many
just how it
board
works.
games are one player?
Yeah.
Yeah.
The sense of community is so real, and it grows so fast when it's under, this umbrella of play.
Sure.
And I think you're right. For the most part, 99%, of us, need some aspect of social connection to feel belonging,
Yeah.
to feel meaningfulness in our lives. And one of the most, prominent behaviors that comes from mental health issues like anxiety or depression, or feeling, ostracized socially, is isolation. And the thing about isolation is it really cascades and snowballs and exacerbates the symptoms that you're experiencing. And so if you can all get under the umbrella or encourage a family member who's isolating, or encourage, a friend who's isolating, to come under this umbrella of play, right? You'll probably be changing their lives. Yeah.
Absolutely.
And I think that's something we can't just underline enough, is that there is so much benefit to it, because so many of the societal ills that we have, whether they're mental, physical, financial, community, is that we just think of ourselves as a single point, and we don't understand that we're part of a larger community. And because we have disconnected from play, we have disconnected from others, we have disconnected from the community, we are just this single individual that's detached. We're an island, and that's not healthy as an individual, as a society, as we grow as from children to adults. And we need to reconnect and bring that back. So, as you said, Joe, maybe we can talk more about how everybody else out there can, bring gaming to other people. I know that you have some wonderful mental health packets that has gaming kind of stuffed inside.
Yeah, that program, our mental health kit program, actually started by going to conventions and looking around, and I'm sure everybody can attest, you get some amazing stuff at conventions and shows. And you usually have this giant bag, and at the end you go, where's that one piece of paper, that one thing? It was in your mind the entire time, and you look in the bag, you can't find it, you give up after 2 minutes of looking for it. So we wanted to be able to create a mental health kit that was curated by mental health professionals on our team and collaborating with us to put together a nice kit of printed resources and sensory items. That way, in any individual, and then we gamified it, and because we're all in gaming, we wanted to stay focused in it. We threw some great mobile game codes in it from some of the studios we work with. We also work with other studios to spin, their characters and various other things into it as well, to be able to have any individual anywhere create their own self-care toolkit from the resources, or have the beginnings of it, a good foundation to create their own self-care toolkit from all the resources in one packet. And we fulfilled over 18,000 in the last 2 years across the U.S., parts of Canada, and the U.K., actually a couple in Australia. That one's very difficult to get there. I don't know why it's so hard, but it's really difficult to send stuff to Australia. But yeah, we do. We have 5 different variations of it, and each one of our mental health kits has focused resources on various things, from a neurodivergent focus one, where we worked with a game studio, Social Cipher, and Geek Therapeutics as well. And then Dr. Kelly from Geeks Like Us as well worked with us on that one. We have our main mental health kit, which is just more generalized mental health, and you'll find more breathing and grounding exercises in it, and sensory items, kind of a few extra tools. And then also we worked, like I said, Bungie, we worked with them to create one for their gaming community there. And then also we worked with other studios create one on suicide prevention awareness, and also veteran focused as well, because we have a lot of veterans in our communities, and we wanted to be able to provide some resources for them as well. And we keep developing new kits as we go down the road as well, and we're working on kind of an RPG styled one right now. That way we can provide more resources for the community that's just growing exponentially and being utilized in such positive ways. We want to be able to have some resources for them too, and people can reach any of these kits on our website or on our app. And the great thing is none of our programs come with a cost. They're all 100% free. We don't charge for anything. We want to put the tools and resources in people's hands. And yeah. I'm sorry, I completely went off the rails.
No,
Chris.
No, that was all. That
was great.
You're good.
No, fantastic. Because we want to engage as many people as possible
Yes.
in gaming and create more communities. And those communities typically are unique, you know, whether it's a
very.
game or whether it's a population of people, and whether it's a certain location, maybe it's colleges, universities, high schools. Local game shops are beautiful if you can find them.
Yep.
Libraries, public spaces, conventions, especially in Long
Comic book
Island.
shops. You name it.
Hobby shops and things like that. And a lot of opportunities to kind of grow and kind of create that community that helps support the mental well-being of people, and hopefully engage them into, you know, proper care if they need so.
Sure. And I will say one thing that I will underline is that you don't have to be good at this. You don't have to be an expert. You don't have to be trained in anything. You don't have to have a lot of money. You don't have to have a big game library or a lot of free time. Like, it's little things. It's reaching out and checking on people. It's like, hey, let's go do this. Let's play this game. You know, because there's a lot of great resources out there that are free or very low cost, and you don't have to be an expert. You don't have to have any even particularly marketable skills to do this, because you already know how to do it. It's connection, and it's hard. It's difficult to put yourself out there, and it's hard to remember to check on the people we love sometimes, or to have a hard conversation with somebody that maybe you don't have that relationship with. But also, it's something that is natural in a way. You'll get into the hang of it, and a lot of the time it's just reaching out. It's just telling people that you're thinking of them, or you're concerned about them, or you want to spend time with them, because one of the things we know about isolation and mental health stuff is, like, it's kind of self-sustaining. You can build a system that works really well to lock you in that place. And novelty and difference and getting people to jump out of that track is really important, even if it's something like completely ridiculous or silly or, you know, borderline not even good or interesting, because it's different. And, you know, if you're stuck in a place, I mean, anything different is new and novel, and it forces your brain to do stuff. And, like, your brain will do the work eventually, but sometimes we all need a little extra help, and that's natural.
And creating that space for others, I think, is essential that you're talking about. It doesn't have to be an elaborate space. You don't need a PS5 to do that. But creating that space for friends and newcomers, and allowing them to be who they are at their best and the way in which they represent themselves. And I think, Joe, you mentioned earlier, I couldn't help thinking about, you know, Carl Jung and talking about, you know, grappling with the shadow, where you get to be more than just what other people are telling you that you are. And I think there's such a liberation that happens there. And we can provide that to each other just in our everyday life, of just having that open space and having that dynamic where we can engage ourselves in a way that it matters and it doesn't matter at the same time.
I will also say, you know, one of the things that I've also, you know, sort of given as homework, so to speak, therapeutic homework to even some adult or parent clients that I have, is to explore seeing if they can engage more in play with their kids, to understand their kids more, and to bring something back towards them as well. You know, if I could prescribe, like, you know, playing D&D, you know, as a family, like once a month, I think that would do wonders. But yeah, I mean, what I hope, you know, happens more and more is that these public places, you know, begin to offer or I don't want to say advertise, but certainly somehow communicate, right, the benefits of what certain people have been drawn to go to, like a hobby shop, like where there might be like some tournaments or some D&D nights or things like that, and sort of reaching out more about how this is good for your mental health, right? It's good for wellness. It's good for self-care. It's good for socialization, for communication. You'll be, building skills, but also learning something about yourself in just going and playing. I know there are a couple of hobby shops in Manhattan that actually were established by a psychologist. One of them is called Hex & Co. and Gamestoria, and they have summer programs that are all about tabletop games and board games, and just bring in tons of kids to sort of facilitate and promote like mental health, betterment. So, yeah.
Yeah, I think I wanted to be sure about the quote because I think it's important. Terry Pratchett in Hogfather for Discworld. Humans need fantasy to be human, to be the place where the falling angel meets the rising ape. And I think that's essential to what we all do, is we provide that space where we can be more than we are. And by more, that means together. And we want to let you all know that you're not alone and we all are here with you. Mm-hmm. So, as we close out, any last words to our communities and things that they should think about, things that they might do going forward, or resources that they can find from your sites?
If you have any questions for us, or if you're interested in any of the mental health kits or any programs that we do, it's just visit guardiansmh.org. You can reach us directly right there. We're very, very quick to respond, and any social network is the same name as well. But also, a lot of people have a sense, the default of feeling alone. Just want to let you know you're not alone.
Yes.
We're all in this together. We're all sitting in the room together talking about the same thing, listening together. So never hesitate to reach out to somebody, even a loved one or just an online friend that you build a relationship with. Let them know that you're not doing all right, and let them know that you're being bothered, and then, we can all work together on the next step from there and be guided to proper resources. You can go meet Joe down in Manhattan. That's about it.
Joe?
Yeah, and if any of you have traveled, from some distance, you can go to geektherapeutics.com. We have a whole sort of listing of therapists across the country that are specialized and certified in utilizing all sorts of geek subculture, whether it's video games or tabletop games, and sort of speaks that language and understands their clients who come from that type of fulfillment of play and self-exploration. And you can obviously refer any friends who are struggling or family members who are struggling, or take them out for a game night.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Like that.
Like a lot. Will?
Excuse me. If there's ever anything I can do that would be useful to you or your situation, reach out. I have like a dozen different emails. There's like a ungodly amount of ways you can contact me. I'm cool with that. Sometimes it takes me a while because email is my personal hell, but we make it work. So happy to do that. The other thing I would say is you have a lot of power in this situation that you don't know you have. If you come to this thing and you show up to this kind of stuff and you say we want this here, it'll be there for you. There's a lot of people out here like us about anything that will be trying to find you and trying to find an audience for things. And I know this because I used to go to anime conventions and go to like the one slightly academic panel, and there would be like me and like 4 people listening to some guy talk about mythology, and like, okay, there was one panel, but like more and more people went to those things, and people showed up to them, and more people started offering them, and then people started being invited to offer them, and then there's people doing research on it. And like when you see those opportunities, participate if you want and feel comfortable. But like the reason we're all here is because someone was like, hey, we think this would be a good thing, show up. And like literally just us emailing each other, be like, hey, does that sound like it would be good to you?
Yeah.
You know, that's what we do. Like, that's why we get to do this job. And so you have a lot of power in this. But also, if there's something you want to see in a space, advocate for it. Just talk to people. It's as simple as, like, if you go to your game shop and you're like, I want to see this kind of thing, a large amount of them will probably make that happen for you. But also that, you know, this is a space that works for you. We want to meet you where you're at. And so if that's in this space, we're happy to come to these things. A lot of us are coming to them anyway. So it's just, we'll get up here and talk about it.
And you'd be surprised how many people are gamers.
Oh, yeah.
I think that's changed radically when you just casually mention in the conversation games, and you'll find somebody who
Yeah.
has something in some area. And I think it's a way to go start the community.
Oh yeah, I mean, and it would be surprising. Like, I think it's a lot of people in a lot of walks of life, and so, you know, take those flyers when you get them. But like, sometimes you'll get, you know, once you scratch that surface on somebody a little bit, you'll start to see a lot of things. Like, I have a coworker that I always had the suspicion that I liked, but never quite figured out why. And then, like, we were talking about something, and he's like playing the soundtrack to a '90s PC game in the background. I'm like, what are you? Is that Age of Mythology? And he's like, oh
Yes.
yeah, I love Age of Mythology. I
Love
was like,
that
what?
game.
And he's like, but he's a gamer, he's a psychologist, he's a musician, he's all these things, but all of them connect together somehow, and like somehow that's how we meet each other at the nexus of like some of the shared things. So.
I'm down to play Age of Mythology anytime.
Anytime.
Oh, yes.
AOE.
He sent me a copy, a DRM-free copy
I
of the
play it
thing
when I'm doing
via
office work.
Teams, and I was like, yep, that's what I'm gonna be doing the rest of the day. Sorry, Hopkins, you paid me salary to play Age of Mythology today.
Yeah, I think for myself, Anthony, the crew from Board Gamers Anonymous, we started out in a game store, a very introverted, challenged community that were looking for others to grow. And at that time, thinking about gaming in any sense as a social activity for adults was unheard of.
Yeah.
And you shied away, you hid it, you didn't want people to know about it. But now, in this day and age, in this culture, it is celebrated, and all of you are celebrated. And again, I think that's where we want to build more and more communities. So Board Gamers Anonymous, we've been doing 10 years of podcasts, Twitch, YouTube videos, print articles, and now Board Game Academics, because we want to bring more attention to the good work of all of our practitioners here today and the organizations that they work for, so that we can build stronger communities to be guardians,
Hey.
point second, right? Of greater mental health and support for our communities. So with that said, this ends the presentation, but not the conversation, especially the Q&A. So we'd like to thank you all for being here today. Thank you. Excellent.
It's a good Guardian's name drop. I like
I see, you like that, huh?
Yeah, that was good.
I can't.
Full
Well,
circle.
we're all guardians of mental health.
There
Yeah,
you go.
there you
I
go.
think I
That's-
got $1 if you want.
Before we head out, does anyone have any questions that we? And again, we will be here, but we will also we have tables available. We have tables with our resources and us there ourselves over in the tabletop area. So if you don't want to kind of shout out a question, I don't blame you. I'm not that guy. We'll be over there so that you can talk to us individually. All right. Thank you all very much.
I'm not sure I understand.
I know you don't see her.